You live surrounded by certainty. You call things real because they appear consistent. You trust your senses, your reasoning, and the steady stream of thoughts that define your experience. Yet, how do you know any of this is true? Every belief rests upon another belief, and each one can be questioned. If your perception can deceive you, and logic itself depends on unproven assumptions, what remains reliable? Al-Ghazali faced this same crisis nearly 1,000 years ago. At the height of intellectual mastery, he asked a question that shattered his own confidence. If everything I know can be doubted, what cannot be? He did not flee this uncertainty. He entered it completely. He discovered that sometimes truth is not found by gaining more answers, but by losing all that pretends to be one dot in the 11th century. Al-Ghazali stood as one of Islam's most celebrated scholars. He had mastered theology, philosophy, and law, and his intellect commanded admiration across the Muslim world. Yet his mind reached a strange exhaustion. He could defend any doctrine, refute any argument, and still feel no peace. He realized his knowledge did not bring truth, it only multiplied opinions. So he left his post, wealth, and position. He withdrew, not to reject thought, but to test its limits. He would later describe this turning point as a crisis of certainty. When thought can justify anything, what can it prove at all? You rely on reason to build stability. You assume logic is the foundation of truth. Yet even logic begins with untested ground. Definitions, perceptions, and assumptions that you simply accept. When you test these foundations, they dissolve. The senses can be mistaken. The intellect can be misled by its own clarity. Al-Ghazali saw that this collapse was not despair, but the beginning of sincerity. For the first time, knowledge became honest, no longer pretending to be absolute. You recognize this feeling in yourself, the discomfort when your convictions begin to shake. But what if this is not a failure? What if truth only appears when the scaffolding of belief finally falls away? Doubt, for Al-Ghazali, was not a weakness. It was a method. He doubted everything the mind could construct: sense data, philosophical proof, even the coherence of self-awareness. Each layer removed false reliance. What remained after all questioning was not nothingness, but a form of presence that could not be denied. He called this process purification. The goal was not to destroy faith, but to refine it until only what cannot be doubted survived. You begin to see doubt differently, not as an attack on truth, but as truth's filter. What endures when all else is questioned? What survives when every mental structure has been examined and found uncertain? You notice how thinking itself creates separation. To think of something is already to stand apart from it. The more you analyze, the more distant what you seek becomes. Al-Ghazali saw that thought could describe reality, but never touch it. Each concept introduced a gap between the knower and the known. The mind kept building frameworks while missing what was already here. He realized that when reasoning exhausts itself, something else begins: awareness without effort, recognition without argument. You ask yourself, when the thinker grows silent, does knowing disappear, or does it finally reveal itself without disguise? You keep seeking certainty as if it were a hidden object. You test ideas, debate views, compare philosophies. Yet the more you seek, the more unstable truth becomes. Al-Ghazali reversed this direction. Instead of chasing answers, he turned attention to the one who seeks. He discovered that awareness itself does not need to be found. It is what allows everything else to be sought. Certainty, then, is not a conclusion but a condition already present. The search obscures what is constant. You begin to ask, if awareness is always here, what exactly have I been trying to reach? When Al-Ghazali emerged from doubt, he described his realization as a light cast into the heart. He meant not emotion but direct recognition, knowledge unmediated by reason. It was self-evident, not proven. He called this yakin, certainty that does not depend on argument. To him, reason was still valuable, but its role was subordinate. Rational thought could polish the mirror, but it could not create reflection itself. What appeared in that clarity was not new information, but the end of confusion. The question that haunted him, what cannot be doubted, had answered itself. That which knows doubt is free from it. After this realization, Al-Ghazali did not reject intellect. He purified its function. He resumed teaching and writing, but with a different foundation. Knowledge was now an instrument, not an identity. Intellect could analyze, but not own truth. You begin to notice how your own mind tries to claim what it understands. My thought, my discovery, my insight. But ownership distorts clarity. When thought serves awareness instead of claiming it, it becomes precise, effortless, and honest. The mind does not lose value. It regains proportion. When reason stops pretending to be the source of truth, it finally becomes useful again. You see now that illusion is not ignorance, but assumption. The illusion is not that you do not know, but that you think you know independently. You mistake the act of naming for understanding, the act of believing for seeing. Al-Ghazali taught that reality itself does not need your affirmation. It does not become true because you think it is. It simply is. The collapse of illusion, then, is the fall of ownership, the release of the I that claims knowledge. When you stop defending what you think, what remains undefended is the real. What happens when knowledge no longer belongs to anyone? You began with a question that threatened to undo everything you believed. Now you see that this undoing was the doorway to clarity. Al-Ghazali's ancient method did not end in despair, but in stillness. The mind, once desperate for certainty, recognizes its own limits and rests. What remains is direct knowing, not thought, not belief, not faith in words, but awareness that needs no support. The question, what cannot be doubted, dissolves because its answer is self-evident. That which asks, that which knows, that which remains when thinking ceases to search. The illusion of separation between seeker and truth has ended. What was sought was never elsewhere. It was the seeing itself. Certainty, as Al-Ghazali discovered, is not a possession but a condition of being. When the mind accepts its limits, humility replaces arrogance. You no longer measure truth by agreement or reputation. You learn to use thought as a servant of awareness, to reason without pride, to question without fear. This is not withdrawal from intellect, but its liberation from illusion. You realize that to live without illusion is not to reject the world, but to stop believing that thought alone defines it. Knowing and being are not separate acts. They are one and the same. To see this is to rest in clarity that neither seeks nor resists. Every illusion depends on untested certainty. Every certainty depends on thought. But when thought observes itself and finds no final ground, awareness remains. That awareness is not something gained through effort. It was never lost. Al-Ghazali's method leads you here, to a place beyond both belief and doubt. What began as a question that destroyed illusion becomes the recognition that only illusion could be destroyed. What cannot be destroyed never required protection. So the inquiry ends not with an answer, but with understanding. When nothing false remains to defend, what else is there to know but knowing itself?